from PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the podcaster who's talking in this voice so he could soothe you like a train. Once again, I'm in my train station voice because it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. Sleep With Me podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. Hey everybody, Scoots. It's time to talk about tonight's sponsor, Helix, and this is going to be an interactive experience or indirect interactive. So you're going to go to helixsleep.com/sleep. That's where I'm going now because I'm trying to pick out a new mattress. I moved. I couldn't bring my Helix with me. I miss it so much. So I'm going to take the sleep quiz. And I'm looking for a queen size. And, first thing you do is pick your sleep position. I sleep mostly on my stomach, a little bit on my side. I do it, I guess, but I'm tossing and turning most nights. So I'm going to pick toss and turn. My preference has changed over the last, traveling. I think I do prefer a firm feel. So I'm going to pick firm feel. Do I ever wake up with back pain? Sometimes I do. So I'm going to pick sometimes. And how often do you sleep hot? Every night is when I sleep hot. I got to stay cool. And so the mattress I got matched with was the Helix Twilight. It's a firm feel, 2-edge support, breathable cover for side sleepers. And I do think I want it with the Glaciotex cool cover and cool force layer. So I'm going to pick out some more details here in a little bit before I get it. But that's how easy it is to find the mattress that suits you and your needs, right? I want the mattress that fits my needs. Doesn't mean it's going to be the best mattress for you. That's what's amazing about Helix and their quiz. You just take the quiz. You see if it fits your needs. You take it with your partner. You pick the mattress you get matched with. And then it comes straight to your door, shipped free of charge, and you just set it up, and you're good to go. I mean, I cannot wait to get back into a Helix mattress. So let me know, take the quiz, let me know what mattress you get matched with, and then Helix always has great deals for our listeners, so check it out. Go to helixsleep.com/sleep to see the latest offers for Sleep With Me listeners. That's helixsleep.com/sleep for current offers. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/sleep. Thanks, everybody. Hey, everybody, Scoots here. And if you've been listening to Sleep With Me for longer than a year, you probably know me pretty well. You probably develop preferences about the show, favorites. Maybe you build your own playlists in your podcast app. Maybe you've kind of, I'm a part of your life. I'm a part of your routine. And I'm hoping if you've been listening over a year, this is the time you're listening to me and hearing me right now. And you're not changing your mind about supporting the show, but realizing, hey, I have been listening. Holy cow, how have I not supported this podcast? How have I not at least tested out Sleep With Me Plus? Because it's built with long-term listeners in mind. If you've never supported the show or you stopped and you're thinking about coming back, maybe like Timothy said, Scoots, I'm a full-time caregiver and, person I care for, and I discovered the podcast, and we love listening to the ad-free content. Or John that said, I see and feel how much you love doing this podcast as your vocation. I'm going to help do my part to keep that a reality. So can you take part in this too? Now, if you decided you're not going to support the show or you're not in a position, you could still root with me. This is like the closest thing to Sleep With Me sports. We're rooting that there is someone listening. Maybe it's you. Maybe can you feel all those other listeners rooting for you? Or are you doing the rooting and saying, yeah, I've been listening 4 years. I've been listening 2 years. It is time for me to support the show. Well, we're rooting for you. And I hope you're hearing me. I hope you're listening. And if you're not the person I'm talking to, I hope you're rooting with me that person is hearing me. because we really could use your support. And you could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And here's the thing. There's a 7-day trial, so you could cancel after 6 days if it doesn't meet your expectations. But if you've been listening over a year, I need you to either root for that person, or maybe you are that person that's going to support the show right now at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Oh, Mystery Bart. A lot of people help out on this show. Who are they?
Chris Posty Poster Son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes. Carl W. the Legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bart. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcript.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. And don't forget, the most comfortable way to listen to Sleep With Me is with sleep phones. You can get sleep phones at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep-phones and use Sleep With Me for $5 off at checkout. Sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep-phones. Use Sleep With Me at checkout. What do you say we get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts that you're thinking about, like things on your mind, thinking things about the past, the present, the future. So thoughts, feelings, anything coming up for you emotionally that you're feeling. It could be physical sensations that are impacting your sleep. It changes in time or temperature, routine, whatever it is that's keeping you awake. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to create a safe place. I'm going to smooth it. I'm going to pat it. I'm going to rub it down. And then I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky dulcet tones. Oh, so creaky are my dulcet tones. They're an acquired taste, but they're easy not to listen to. I also have pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, which means I'm going to go off topic. I'm going to get mixed up. I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to forget what I went back for. And then I'll say, what did I? Then I'll go on a tangent about the word W. And that'll all be to take your mind off stuff and keep you company so you could fall asleep. So if you're new, I'm so glad you're here. But I really want to welcome you in and give you all the information you need. So believe it or not, this is an intro, but it's kind of part of the podcast, and that can throw people off. It's one of the many things. So I want to, here's something. If I talked about stumbling blocks before, because talk about a loaded word that should be more loaded. Like people just throw around stumbling blocks. Imagine if they did. And it feels like too broad a generalization for me because I've stumbled on many blocks. Believe me, stumbling blocks. Stumbling's my name. Stumbling's my game. Stumbling on blocks is just one part of the game but I'm not playing when I stumble on blocks. Because here's the thing: there's stumbling. So there's a traditional. Here's two types of blocks you could stumble on. There's the small children's blocks, right? What are they? Are those called alphabet blocks? I don't know. The wooden blocks the kids still get them. I don't know why they call them toy blocks, but I think that's what they're called. And then the other kind of block I was thinking of is any kind of block that's long enough to bang your shin. And at first you'd say, which block not that I should be loathing blocks, but which block do I loathe stumbling over? And I'd say, well, can you stumble over a block where they hit your shin? And I say, is that a dare? Because I can guarantee you I shall, and I have, and I will. I mean, you can definitely stumble on the little blocks, but also you could step on them, which is not pleasant either. But I mean, you could stumble over, but it's just a term. But here's the thing. I'd prefer, how about tumbling blocks? Blocks you tumble with. That's what I'd like to take your stumbling blocks and make them into tumbling blocks. And you'd say, Scoots, and I'd say, come on down to tumbling blocks, much like our other imaginary businesses, the Ovularity Zone, Tube Town, and other businesses, Velcro zipper shop for Velcro and zippers for fun. Oh, making mud pies. All the businesses haven't started. What was this business? Oh, tumbling blocks. It's a place where you can tumble, much like it doesn't have those bouncy. It's a bit like a bouncy castle without the castle. It's a metaphor, much like this podcast. It's a metaphor that you got to roll with. Okay, so let me get back. If you're new, this podcast is not for everybody. I think I just did an example of like why, but this is a podcast you got to give a few tries to. That's what most listeners say. So if you're skeptical or you're doubtful, it's going to give you more information. These are some of the tumbling blocks that could get in your way. Like skepticism or doubt that this is going to put you to sleep. That's very valid. I mean, I've tried so many things to put me to sleep. So all I can say is give it a few tries, or about the style or the nature of my bare attempts at humor. This is also a podcast you don't really listen to, so that takes some getting used to. It just like you say, wait a second, we just come down and we tumble with blocks. What happens after that? I say, well, then you could go to Tube Town. What's at Tube Town? Inner tubes that you inflate or deflate or roll with. We may have a floating pool one day. So, yeah, but yeah, that's all we do. It's a bit like a pointless meander. We rolling with tumbling blocks. You tumble with them. In a tumble-friendly area. Have your tumbles here. That's what I'd say. Come down to Tumbletown, where the tumbles are free. Costs money to get in, but the tumbles are free. Second tumble, same as the first. I don't know. Oh, what was my point? So, it's a podcast you don't really listen to. You just barely pay attention. A bit like background noise that's just slightly more engaging. This is also a podcast you don't really put you to sleep. It's more here while you fall asleep. So you just kind of barely pay attention. And then that's why the shows are over an hour, is they have plenty of time to drift off. You say, okay, I can fall asleep at any time I want. You just, ideally, you're listening to me one moment and then you wake up the next. But I'll be here, whether you wake up in the middle of the night or you're listening all night because you got something else going on or you can't sleep. I'm here to keep you company. So that's, those are other tumbling blocks. The other things that can throw people off is the structure of the show. Show starts off with a greeting. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Just like the greeter at Tumbletown to say, hey, come on in. First tumble's free because it's outside. But before you came in, that was your first tumble. Also a tumble-friendly area. It looked like a walkway. It was really a friendly tumble zone. What was he saying? Oh, the structure of the show. So that's the greeting. Then there's support for listeners. Then there's support from listeners to keep the podcast free for everybody. And then somewhere around 6 or 8 minutes in the show, the intro starts, which we're now about 10 minutes into. And the intro is a show within a show to ease you into bedtime. It introduces you to the podcast, and it gives you some distance from the day, helps you start to unwind. And some listeners fall asleep during it, but a lot of listeners are doing something else as part of their bedtime routine. So that's the intro. Then there's business between the intro and the show. That's just how podcast business structure works. That keeps the show free for anybody. You know, yeah. Then there's a story. Tonight it'll be something new. We're going to try visiting a theme park ride that's not open, like an overview of it. So that called World of Motion. So we'll talk about that. We'll run through what it was like and stuff like that. And then there's some thank yous at the end of the show. So that's the structure of the show. The other things to know that are important are, that you deserve a good night's sleep. I make the show because you deserve something to put you to sleep, whether it's sleep with me or you give it a few tries. It's not for you. Go to sleepwithme.com/no-thank-you. You could see other great sleep stuff out there. But also, I've been there, so I know how it feels. If I can give you something that'll help make your bedtime less stressful and take your mind off stuff, that's really my honor, right? Like, I get to do that and help you out, get some rest when I've been there. That's amazing for me to have that opportunity to help you because I know what it feels like. I don't want you to have to go through that rigmarole. So that's why I make the show, and that's why I say give it a few tries, see how it goes. I really hope it can work for you. I really work hard. I earn and I strive. I appreciate you coming by, and I really want to help you fall asleep. Here's a couple of ways I'm able to be here for you twice a week for free. Thanks. Hey, everybody, it's Scoots here, and I know you might be getting ready. You're getting in bed. You're getting comfortable. If you fall asleep fast, it's critical you listen. If you fall asleep fast, this show's kind of designed to put people to sleep over a 20 or 30-minute period, but that's great. You're an exception to the rule. You fall asleep fast. That is awesome. But we need people who fall asleep fast to support the show. There's just no other way for us to pay the bills. And I don't know if you're the one I'm trying to get through to that's listening to me, that's hearing me right now for the first time, you're making that connection. Holy cow, I fall asleep in 5 minutes. I never thought about what it takes to make this show. I never thought about that it needs my support. Or maybe you're one of the people rooting for that person. Man, I hope that person's out there that's going to support the show because it makes my life better. I just can't support the show. But I know there's someone out there who is. Like Tiffany Y, who said, just because you could get something for free doesn't mean you should. I know if I have trouble sleeping, I just have to listen. I'll be out in no time. That's definitely worth a few dollars a month. I'm pretty sure if you try it out and you fall asleep fast, you're going to have a great experience. And you could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But like I said, if you're not in a place to support the show right now, you've decided you're not going to support the show, then root with me. Is that fall asleep fast listener listening and hearing me right now? We just happen to catch you and we're rooting for you. Root for them together because we need your support. Are you hearing us cheer for you and you say, wait, no, that is me. That is me. Just like Tiffany. I had no idea. Of course I want to support the show. It's changed my life so much for the better. So if you're that person, you'll be the hero, the heroine, the champion we're looking for, that we're rooting for, because you're not alone. We're all rooting for one another together here in the deep dark night. Thanks. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the second time you get to hear me say that. Welcome, because this episode is constructed from an intro from the past and our Read With Me episodes here. It's a Frankie and Victor episode with our friend Frank and his, so I'm reading from the book Victor and Frankie, also known as a famous Mary Shelley novel. And this is a little bit different than episodes we've done with Sleep With Me, but we tested this out on Sleep With Me Plus. It was so popular, we wanted to bring it to everyone. So it's me reading through a book, also paraphrasing, making stuff sleepy, but it's not perfectly sleepy. I mean, just like everything else we make, it exists within this world, but it's pretty chill. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, more of Victor and Frankie. Thanks, everybody. Chapter 15. Such was the history of my beloved cottagers. It impressed me deeply. I learned from the views of social life which it developed to admire their virtues and to appreciate vices that humans had. As yet I looked upon stuff as at a distance, because benevolence and generosity were ever present before me. This created within me a desire to become an actor in a busy scene where so many admirable qualities were called forth and displayed. But in giving an account of the progress of my intellect, I must not omit a circumstance which occurred in the beginning of the month of August of the same year. One night during my accustomed visit to the neighboring wood where I collected my own food and brought home firing wood, for my protectors, I found on the ground a leather portmanteau containing several articles of dress and some books. I eagerly seized the prize and returned with it to my hovel. Fortunately, the books were written in the language, the elements of which I had acquired at the cottage. They consisted of Paradise Lost, a volume of Plutarch's Lives, and the Sorrows of Werther. The possessions of these treasures gave me extreme delight. I now constantly studied and exercised my mind upon these histories, whilst my friends were employed in their ordinary occupations. I can hardly describe to you the effects of these books. They produced in me an affinity of new images and feelings that sometimes raised me to ecstasy, but more frequently sunk me into lowest dejection. In the Sorrows of Werther, besides the interest of its simple and affecting story, so many pinions are canvassed, and so many lights thrown upon which had been hitherto to me obscure subjects, that I found in it a never-ending source of speculation and astonishment. The gentle and domestic manners it described, combined with lofty sentiments and feelings which had for their object something out of self, accorded well with my experience among my protectors, and with the wants which were forever alive in my own bosom. But I thought Werther himself a more divine being than I have ever beheld or imagined. His character contained no pretension, but it sank deep. The disquisitions about other realms and going to other realms were calculated to fill me with wonder. I did not pretend to enter into the merits of the case, yet I inclined towards the opinions of the hero, who, when they left, I wept without precisely understanding it. As I read, however, I applied much personally to my own feelings and conditions. I found myself similar, yet at the same time strangely unlike the beings concerning whom I read, and to whose conversation I was a listener. I sympathized with and partially understood them, but I was unformed in mind. I was dependent on none and related to none. The path of my departure was free, and there would be no one to lament my leaving this realm. My person was leaf and plant-based, though I was a being like these beings that were not. My stature, gigantic. What did this mean? Who was I? What was I? Whence did I come? What was my destination? These questions continually recurred, but I was unable to solve them. The volume of Plutarch's Lives, which I possessed, contained the histories of the first founders of the ancient republics. This book had a far different effect upon me than the Sorrows. I learned from Werther's imaginations in despondency and gloom. But Plutarch taught me high thoughts. He elevated me above the wretched sphere of my own reflections, to admire and love the heroes of past ages. Many things I read surpassed my understanding and experience. I had a very confused knowledge of kingdoms, wide, extensive countries, mighty rivers, and boundless seas. But I was perfectly unacquainted with towns and large assemblages of people. The cottage of my protectors had been the only school in which I had studied human nature. But this book developed new and mightier scenes of action. I read of people concerned in public affairs, governing or going against other human beings. I felt the greatest ardor for virtue rise within me, an abhorrence for vice, as far as I understood the signification of those terms, relative as they were, as I applied them to pleasure and pain alone. Induced by these feelings, I was, of course, led to admire peaceful lawgivers, Numa, Solon, and Lycurgus, in preference to Romulus and Theseus. The lives of my protectors caused these impressions to take a firm hold on my mind. Perhaps if my first introduction to humanity had been made by somebody else, like a young soldier burning for glory, I should have been imbued with different sensations. But Paradise Lost excited different and far deeper emotions. I read it as I read other volumes which had fallen into my hands as true history. It moved every feeling of wonder and awe that the picture of an omnipotent God dealing with the, other beings was capable of exciting within me. I often referred to several situations as their similarity struck to me to my own. I was like Adam. I was apparently united by no link to any other being in existence. I mean, Adam's state was far different from mine in every other respect. He had come forth from the hands of a God, a perfect creature, happy, prosperous. He was guarded by a special care of his Creator. Wink, wink. He was allowed to converse with him, wink, wink, and acquire knowledge from beings of a superior nature. Not me, Victor. I was wretched, helpless, and alone. Many times I wondered if my Creator was like the one deep down below the ground. That could be a fitter emblem for my condition. For often, like in the book about that person in the red spandex, I viewed the bliss of my protectors with bitter gall. Envy rose up within me. Another circumstance strengthened and confirmed these feelings. Soon after my arrival in the hovel, I discovered some papers in the pocket of the dress which I had taken from your laboratory. At first I neglected them, but now I was able to decipher the characters in which they were written, and I began to study them with diligence. It was your journal of the 4 months that preceded my creation. You minutely described in these papers every step you took in the progress of your work. And this history was mingled with accounts of domestic occurrences. You doubtless recollect these papers. And here they are. Everything is related in them, which bears reference to my accursed origin. The whole detail of that series of going against the nature of compost and leaves and tree-based beings, and what it produced. It is set in view. The minutest description of my odious and loathsome person is given in language which painted your feelings and rendered mine indelible. I did not like how I feel when I read it. Oh, how I was filled with woe on the day you created me. I exclaimed out loud. Accursed Creator, I would say. Why did you form someone out of leaves and compost and just bits and pieces of, you didn't think about beauty at all. And then you turned your back on me. I mean, look at Adam, man. God in pity made man beautiful and alluring after God's own image. Of my form, compost. Other than occasionally smelling like compost, Victor, I mean, I resemble you in no other ways, at least on the outside. even below the earth, with the red spandex in the warm rooms, those people had companions, people to admire and encourage. But I am solitary and abhorred. These were the reflections of my hours of despondency and solitude. But when I contemplated the virtue of the cottagers, their amiable and benevolent dispositions, I persuaded myself that when they should become acquainted with my admiration of their virtues, they would compassionate me and overlook my, that I looked like a big heap of compost, kind of. Could they turn from their door one who, though leaf and plant-based, solicited their compassion and friendship? I resolved not to despair, but in every way to fit myself for an interview with them, which would decide, I was still out of practice. I postponed my attempt for some months longer, for the importance attached to its success inspired within me a dread lest I should fail. Besides, I found my understanding improved so much with each day's experience that I was unwilling to commence this undertaking until a few more months should have added to my sagacity. Several changes in the meantime took place in the cottage. The presence of Sweet Sweet Sweetie diffused happiness among its inhabitants, but I also found that a greater degree of plenty reigned there. Felix and Agatha spent more time in amusement and conversation and were assisted. More people came to help them. They did not appear rich, but they were contented and happy, their feelings serene and peaceful, while mine every day became more tumultuous. Increase of knowledge only discovered to me what more clearly I was an outsider, outcast. I cherished hope, it was true, but it vanished when I beheld my person reflected in the water, or my shadow in the moonshine, even as that frail image and inconsistent shadow showed me what I was. But, I thought self-reliance, right, man? I endeavored to crush these fears and to fortify myself for the new trial, which, in a few months, I resolved to undergo. Looked at myself in the, water. I said, toughen it out. And sometimes I allowed my thoughts unchecked by reason to ramble in the fields of paradise and dared to fancy amiable and lovely creatures sympathizing with my feelings and cheering my gloom, like best friends, dear Victor. Their angelic countenances breathed smiles of consolation, but it was all a dream. No Eve soothed my sorrows, nor shared my thoughts. You didn't even think to make an Eve except in fictional portrayals of my existence that had nothing to do with you, Victor. I was alone. I remember Adam's supplication to his creator, but where was mine? Where was my creator? Where did he gone? Oh, where is my creator gone? Where could he be? But it created a bitterness in my heart, and I cursed you. Now, autumn passed, and I saw with surprise and grief, because I didn't know anything, Victor, even though I knew. The leaves started falling off the trees, and nature again assumed a barren and bleak appearance, the same one it had worn when I first beheld the woods in the lovely moon. It had not heeded the bleakness related to the weather. I was better fitted by my conformation for the endurance of cold than heat anyway. But my chief delights were those of the flowers, the birds, the apparel of summer. When those deserted me, I turned with more attention towards the cottagers. Their happiness was not decreased by the absence of summer. They loved and sympathized with one another, their joys depending on each other. They were not interrupted by the falling of the leaves. The more I saw of them, the greater my desire to claim their protection and kindness. My heart yearned to be known and loved by these amiable creatures, to see their sweet looks directed towards me with affection was the utmost limit of my ambition. I dared not think that they would turn them from me with disdain. There was people, in poverty that stopped by their door and they were never driven away. I asked, it is true, for greater treasures than a little food or rest. I required kindness and sympathy, but I did not believe myself utterly unworthy of it. The winter advanced and an entire revolution of the seasons had taken place since I awoke into life. My attention at this time was solely directed towards my plan of introducing myself into the cottage of my protectors. I resolved many projects, but that on which I finally fixed was to enter the dwelling when the older man was there alone. I had sagacity enough to discover that just looking upon me, maybe my voice was harsh, but there was nothing terrible in it. And I thought, therefore, that in the absence of the kids, I could get the goodwill and mediation of DeLacy, and then I might be tolerated by my younger protectors. One day when the sun shone on the red leaves that strewed on the ground and diffused cheerfulness, although it denied warmth, sweet sweetie, Agatha and Felix departed on a long country walk, and DeLacy was at home, left in the cottage. When the children departed, he took up his guitar and played several mournful but sweet airs, more sweet and mournful than I'd ever heard him play before. At first his countenance was illuminated with pleasure, but as he continued, thoughtfulness and sadness succeeded, and at length, laying aside his instrument, he sat absorbed in recollection and reflection. My heart beat quick. This was the hour and the moment which would decide my hopes or realize my fears. Everybody was gone to the neighboring fair. All was silent in and around the cottage. It was an excellent opportunity, yet when I proceeded to go through with my plan, my limbs, I couldn't move and I sank to the ground. But I wouldn't be stopped. Again I rose, and exerting all the firmness of which I could muster, I removed the planks on my hovel that I used to conceal when I was laying low. The fresh air revived me, and with renewed determination I approached the door of the cottage. I knocked. "Who is there?" the old man said. "Come in." I entered. "Pardon the intrusion," I said. "I am a traveler in need of a little rest. You would greatly oblige me if you would allow me to remain a few minutes before the fire." "Entered," said DeLacy, "and I'll try in what manner I can to relieve your wants. But unfortunately my children are gone from home, and I am without sight, so I'll find it difficult to procure food for you. Do not trouble yourself, my kind host. I have food. It is only warmth and rest that I need." I sat down, and a silence ensued. I knew that every moment was precious to me, yet I remained irresolute in what manner to commence the interview, when the old man addressed me. "By your language, stranger, I suppose you are my countryman. Are you French?" "No, but I was educated by a French family and understand that language only. I am now going to claim the protection of some friends whom I sincerely love, and whose favor I have high hopes. Are they Germans?" "No, they are French. But let us change the subject. I am an unfortunate and deserted heap of compost. I look around. I have no relation or friend upon this earth. I went too hard. Now I can see it, Victor. But these amiable people, to whom they've never even seen me, they know little of me. But I'm full of fear, for if I fail, I'm afraid I'll be outcast in the world forever. Do not despair. To be friendless is indeed unfortunate, but the hearts of people, when unprejudiced by any obvious self-interest, are full of love and charity. Rely, therefore, on your hopes. If these friends are good and amiable, do not despair. They are kind. They are the most excellent creatures in the world, but unfortunately, there's nothing they can do. I have a good disposition, but my life so far has been hitherto harmless and in some degrees beneficial, but their eyes would be clouded upon sight of me, where they ought to see and feel a kind friend. Like I said, they'll only behold a heap of, not even a heap, it's just like I'm a walking leaf-based being That sounds good, but it's like, well, I don't quite understand, he said, but that's unfortunate. If you really are blameless, can't you undeceive them? Well, I'm trying to undertake that task, and it is on this account that I feel so fearful. I tenderly love these friends. I have, unknown to them, been for many months in the habits of their daily kindness towards them. But they believe, when they see me, they'll think, oh boy, this is a big, big, big thing. Is it a leaf? Is it a tree? Is it a sentient pile of compost? Huh, where these friends reside? Nearby this spot. The old man paused and continued, you know, if you can confide in me the particulars of your tale, maybe I could be of use in undeceiving them. I mean, since I can't judge by sight, there's something in your words which persuades me you're sincere. And, you know, I'm poor, I've been exiled, so it would afford me a true pleasure to be in any way serviceable to a fellow human being. Oof, well, excellent, I said. I thank you and accept your offer. You raise me from the dust by this kindness, and I trust that by your aid I shall not be driven from the society and sympathy of your fellows. I mean, heaven forbid, he said, if you're really that bad, I mean, it's only if your intentions are bad that your virtue had never been instigated. I mean, I'm unfortunate. My family and I were cast out too, and we were innocent. So therefore, I get it. I get where you're coming from. Well, how can I thank you, my best and only benefactor? From your lips I have heard the voice of kindness directed towards me. I shall forever be grateful. In your presence, humanity assures me of success with those friends whom I'm on the point of meeting. May I know the name and residence of these friends? I paused. This, I thought, was the moment of decision. Would this moment rob me or bestow on me happiness forever? I struggled vainly for firmness to cruelly create an answer, but the effort sapped my remaining strength, and I sat on the chair and sobbed. At that moment, I heard the steps of my younger protectors. I had not a moment to lose. I grabbed Delancey's hand and said, now's the time, protect me. You and your family are the friends I seek. Do not desert me in my hour of trial. Goodness gracious, said the old man, who are you? At that instant, the cottage door was opened, and Felix, sweet sweetie, and Agatha entered. Who can describe their surprise and consternation on beholding me? Agatha laid down on one of those couches for laying down. Sweet sweetie ran off, and Felix darted forward and said, something about that, like, and he said, are you holding, but he was trying to say, are you holding my father's hand? And I held on to his father's niece like a weeping child, but he sent me out of the cottage. He was very displeased. He's got the heart of the lion, that Felix. Well, my heart sank within me, and I saw him saying, hit the road, Jack, and I quitted the cottage, and in the general tumult, hid out in my hovel. Chapter 16. Cursed Creator. Why was I still around? Why in that instant did I not extinguish the spark of existence which you had so wantonly bestowed? I know not. Despair had not yet taken possession of me. My feelings were very warm. In fact, my ears were steaming. I could, with pleasure, have rearranged the cottage so their inhabitants could not find anything they needed without taking some time to find it. And maybe they would even blame one another for their missing things. When night came, I quitted my retreat and wandered in the wood. And now, no longer restrained by concern of discovery, I gave voice to those feelings deep within me. I was like I was making, as one poet said, a yawl, like in that movie Sleeping Poets Society. Not sure if it was a sound, not the kind of sound a regular pile of compost makes, like the sound of a maw that's had a very bad day. Yeah, I was like walking around like a puppy poo that had broken the toils, and I thought about, again, rearranging things without permission, maybe even throwing some in the garbage. Those objects which obstructed me. I was headed through the woods, stomping my way through the woods with a stag-like swiftness. Oh, what a non-pleasant night had passed. The cold stars shone in mockery, and the bare trees waved their branches above me. Now and then the sweet voice of a bird burst forth amidst the universal swiftness and the stillness, and woke me up, 'cause all save I were at rest or in enjoyment. I, like something no one understood, something frowny within me, finding myself unsympathized with, wished not upon the stars. I wished the stars had tears at this point. And I even moved around stuff and dirtied the trail and threw branches and even broke the branches. And then I was so tired I sat down among the branches and brambles. I even found fallen berries and smushed those fallen berries one by one with a furrow in my brow. But this was a luxury of sensation that could not endure. I got really tired because of all this exertion and sank on the damp grass in the sick impotence of despair. There was none among the myriads of people who existed that could pity or assist me. Should I feel kindness about that? How should I feel about that? I felt rent and torn in a sense about it. No. From that moment, I declared everlasting displeasure against humans, and more than all, against he who formed me and sent me forth to this insupportable misery and woe, by the way. And as I said many times before, not the Joey Lawrence woe. W-O-E woe, woe is me. Then the sun rose, and I heard voices, and I knew it was impossible to return to my treat during that day. No more home in my hovel. Accordingly, I hid myself in some thick underwood, determining to devote the ensuing hours to reflection on my situation. The pleasant sunshine and pure air of the day restored me to some degree of tranquility, and when I considered what had passed at the cottage, I could not help but believe that I'd maybe been too hasty in my conclusions. I'd certainly acted imprudently. It was apparent that my conversation had interested the father in my behalf, and I just didn't know better than to expose myself. I really didn't realize they would walk right in. I thought they were going to be gone for longer. I ought to have familiarized the old DeLacy to me, and by degrees to have discovered myself to the rest of his family, when they should have been prepared for my approach. But I did not believe my errors to be irretrievable, and after much consideration I resolved to return to the cottage, seek DeLacy, and by my representations to him, win him back over. These thoughts calmed me, and in the afternoon I sank into a profound sleep. But, my temperature had still risen, and it did not allow me to be visited by peaceful dreams. That whole day, dear Victor, Holy moly. It was a scene, it was playing out before my eyes over and over again. If only there was such a thing as a podcast back then to take my mind off of stuff, or at least to distract me and soothe me. But, I guess the guy that makes that podcast makes it for everyone, even compost-based beings, leaf-based beings. But that was many, many years down the road, dear Victor. I was picturing Felix and Sweet Sweetie and DeLacy. When I woke after rest, I was not rested at all. I was tired, Victor. And then I realized it was already nighttime, and so I crept forth from my hiding place and went in search of food. When my hunger was appeased, I directed my steps towards the well-known path that conducted to the cottage. All there was at peace. I crept into my hovel and remained in silent expectation of the accustomed hour when the family arose. That hour passed. The sun mounted high in the heavens, but the villagers did not appear. I trembled with worry and concern, wondering what was going on, wondering what was up. The inside of the cottage, there was no lights on. I heard no motion. I cannot describe how this felt for me, sitting in my hovel. Presently, 2 people passed by, but pausing near the cottage, they entered into conversation, and they were using their hands. They were talking with their hands and their bodies. But I did not understand what they said as they spoke the language of the country, which differed from that of my protectors. Soon after, however, Felix approached with someone else. I was surprised, as I knew that he had not quitted the cottage in that morning, and waited anxiously to discover from his discourse the meaning of these unusual appearances. "Do you consider," said his companion to him, "that you will be obliged to pay 3 months' rent and to lose the produce of your garden? I do not wish to take any unfair advantage, and I beg, therefore, that you will take some days to consider of your determination." "It is utterly useless," replied Felix. "We can never again live in this cottage. My father, it's like I can't even put it into words. Me, my father, my sister, my dear, dear sweetie, my wife now, my sister, I can't, what I say, I don't know what else to say. I entreat with you not to reason with me any more. Take possession of your tenement and let me move away from this place." Felix kind of shook like a dog after a bath as he said this. He and his companion entered the cottage, in which they remained for a few minutes, and then they departed. I never saw any of the family of DeLacy more. I continued for the remainder of the day in my hovel in a state of utter and, I was vexed. VEXED, Victor. My protectors had departed and had broken the only link that held me to the world. For the first time, other than the time just yesterday, my ears started to steam. And this time, though, I may as well let it steam, man. This is, I'm not going to blaze like a 420 blaze. I'm going to blaze from my heart out, man. I strive no longer to hold back, and allowed myself to be borne away by a stream, and I turned my mind towards stomping through the woods, and when I saw to my friends the mild voice of DeLacy, the gentle eyes of Agatha, and the exquisite beauty of Sweet Sweetie, those thoughts vanished, and a gush of tears soothed me again. But again, when I reflected on it, that they had turned away from me, my strong feelings returned. But the only thing I was irritable with were humans. But like I said, I went back to breaking sticks that had fallen on the ground, and even crushing rocks in my hands, and knocking rocks together, juggling rocks for a bit, but then that seemed too enjoyable. And as night advanced, I made myself a little, like a bonfire pit, And then I went in the garden and picked in the garden of the cottage, picked everything in the cottage garden. And I said, I'm gonna let this turn into compost. And then the moon fell behind the clouds, and a wind picked up. And then the wind quickly dispersed the clouds that loitered in the heavens. But the wind was also representative of my strong, strong feelings beyond reason and reflection. And so then I had a little bonfire poo, and I looked to the west, to the western horizon, the edge of which the moon nearly touched. A part of the orb was at length, and I waved the stick, which had kind of like a sparkler, you would call it nowadays. And then I said goodbye to all of it. And I said, I'm going to make this very warm and into charcoal, which will also could be mixed with the compost. And as soon as I was convinced that was a guarantee, I quitted the scene and sought refuge in the woods. And now, with the world before me, whither should I bend my steps? I resolved to fly far from the scene of my misfortunes. But to me, a heap of compost, every place would probably be equally not great. At length, the thought of you crossed my mind. I learned from your papers that you were my father, my creator. And to whom could I apply with more fitness than to whom who had given me my existence? Among the lessons that Felix had bestowed upon the sweet, sweet sweetie, geography had not been omitted, and I learned from these relative situations of the different countries of the earth. You had mentioned Geneva as the name of your town, and towards this place I resolved to proceed. But how was I to direct myself? I knew I must travel in a southwesterly direction to reach my destination, but the sun was my only guide. I did not know the names of the town that I was to pass through, nor could I ask for information from a person. But I didn't give up. From only you could I hope for succor, whatever it was. Although towards you I felt no sentiment but displeasure. Unfeeling, heartless creator, you had endowed me with perceptions and passions and then set me aside for scorn, not scarn like Michael Scarn. But on you only had I any claim for pity and redress, and from you I was determined to sink and seek that justice which I vainly attempted to gain from other human beings. My travels were long, and the sufferings I endured not pleasant. It was late in autumn when I quitted the district where I had so long resided. I traveled only at night, concerned I would encounter the visage of a human. Nature was starting to get into winter around me, and the sun became heatless. Rain and snow poured. Mighty rivers were frozen. The surface of the earth was hard and chill and bare, and I found no shelter. O earth, how often did I imprecate, frowny frowns upon you? The mildness of my nature had fled, and all inside me was turned to gall and bitterness. Not bitter gall, gall and bitterness. The nearer I approached to your habitation, the more deeply did I feel a spirit of not happiness enkindled in my heart. Snow fell, and the waters were hardened. But I rested not. A few things now and then directed me, and I possessed a map of the country, but I often wandered wide and far from my path. My feelings allowed me no respite. Nothing occurred which I could not feed with just my thoughts and feelings, I thought. But a circumstance that happened when I arrived on the confines of Switzerland, when the sun had recovered its warmth and the earth began to look green again, confirmed in a special manner, how my feelings were correct, and confirmed. I generally rested during the day and traveled only when I was secured by night from the view of people. One morning, however, finding my path lay through a deep wood, I ventured to continue my journey after the sun had risen. The day, which was one of the first of spring, cheered even me by the loveliness of its sunshine and the balminess of its air. I felt emotions of gentleness and pleasure that had long appeared gone. They revived within me. Half surprised by the novelty of these sensations, I allowed myself to be borne away by them. And forgetting my solitude, I dared to be happy. Soft tears again bedewed my cheeks, and I even raised my humid eyes with thankfulness towards the blessed sun which bestowed such joy upon me. I continued to wind among the paths of the wood until I came to its boundary, which was skirted by a deep and rapid river, into which many of the trees bent their branches, now budding with the fresh spring. Here I paused, not exactly knowing what path to pursue, when I heard the sound of voices that induced me to conceal myself under the shade of a cypress. I was scarcely hid when a young one ran to the spot where I was concealed, laughing, as if she ran from, she was playing hide and seek or something. She continued her course along the precipitous sides of the river when suddenly she fell in and said, "Oh boy, is this cold." I ran out from my hiding spot and grabbed her hand and said, "Here, put on something warm." And I tried to warm her up, and I said, "Hey, you can get warm." But then I heard other people she was playing hide and seek with, and they saw me, a pile of compost, and they hastened her away towards the deeper part of the woods. I followed, but I didn't know why. But when one of the people saw me draw near, they said, "Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more." Since my name wasn't Jack, I fell to the ground confused, and then they ran off. And that was my reward for my benevolence. I'd saved someone from being freezing cold in the river. And now, as a recompense, I was called Jack and told not to come back no more. It's painful. Painful on the inside and the outside. The feelings of kindness and gentleness which I had entertained but a few moments before gave place to the gnashing of teeth. My heart was inflamed, and I vowed an eternal unpleasantness for all human beings. But the strength of my feelings overcame me, and I fell asleep. And for some weeks, I led a solitary life in the woods, endeavoring to try to calm, breathing, slowing down, wondering if maybe I was called Jack. Saying that again and again and again, I remained there. And I thought about the injustice and gratitude of these people. My strong feelings alone could compensate me for this anguish. And then after some period of rest, I continued my journey. The labors I endured were no longer to be alleviated by the bright sun or gentle breezes of spring. All joy was but a mockery which insulted my desolate state and made me feel even, more or less pleasure. More or less pleasure. There's no space for it. But my toils now drew near to a close, and in 2 months from this time I reached the environs of Geneva. It was evening when I arrived, and I retired to a hiding place among the fields that surround the area, and I meditated in the manner what I would say to you. I was also oppressed by fatigue and hunger, and far too unhappy to enjoy the gentle breezes of the evening or the prospect of the sun setting behind the stupendous mountains of Jura. At this time, a slight sleep relieved me from the pain of reflection, but then a child woke me up. They came running into the recess where I was sleeping with all the sportiveness of infancy. Suddenly, I saw them, And I said, are they playing hide and seek? This kid, they couldn't have anything against a heap of compost. They haven't lived enough to imbibe in that kind of judgment. And I said, maybe they could be my companion and friend, so I'm not so desolate. And so I said, hey, kid, it's me. And soon he saw me and put his hands in front of his eyes. He said, is that a talking pile of compost? And I said, child, what is the meaning of this? I'm just a pile of compost. Why does everybody take a gut reaction to compost? And he called me a WRETCH. And he said, he said other things. And he said, compost is rotten, man. Rotten. Compost is rotten. So I got to get out of here. And I said, if compost is so rotten, maybe you're rotten too, kid. And the kid said, no, you're the rotten one. And I said, I told you so. And the kid said, what? And I said, you are what you are. You are what you call other people. And he goes, my father is M. Frankenstein, and he's going to give you a talking to. And I said, Frankenstein? I said, whoa, this is like synchronicity, man. And the kid still was like saying judgment after judgment after judgment against me. And then I said, kid, what's the thing you most want in the world? And they said, to be honest, I want to go to another plane and visit somebody soon as possible. And I said, well, the compost can show you the way. I'm always in a state of transition. I'm in a transitory state. And we talked for hours and hours and hours. After, we also, it was like old friendship. It wasn't enjoyable because we were constantly calling each other rotten. But back and forth, and he said, yeah, I think I'll take your advice. I think I'll cross over so I go to the Rainbow Bridge. And I said, yeah, I can go over that Rainbow Bridge. And there you'll see the person you seek. And so they did, and they headed out. And then I saw they left behind something glittering. It was a portrait inside of a locket, the most lovely woman. The portrait softened and attracted me, and I gazed with delight upon the portrait. I said, what nice lashes, what nice lips. But then I got irritable again, because I remembered that I would be forever deprived of the delights that such beautiful creatures could bestow, and that she whose resemblance I contemplated would, in regarding me, have changed that air of divine benignity to one, of saying ROTTEN. Can you wonder that such thoughts transported me to irritability? I only wonder that at that moment, instead of venting my feelings in exclamations, I didn't rush among people and tell them the truth what I thought about them. While I was overcome by these feelings, I left the spot, and to try to find a more secluded hiding place to live in. I entered a barn which appeared to me to be empty, but a woman was there sleeping on some straw. She was young, not indeed so beautiful as whose portrait I held, but of an agreeable aspect and blooming in the loveliness of youth and health. Here, I thought, is one of those joy-imparting smiles that are bestowed upon all but me. And then I bent over and whispered, awake, fairest, your love is near. And, I just wanted one look of affection from thine eyes. The sleeper stirred, but I got nervous. What if she totally woke up and realized that I was giving advice to kids I shouldn't have been giving advice to? She would assuredly act if her darkened eyes opened and she beheld me. So I knew this was not a good idea. It stirred within me. But then I got another idea about the locket. I said, I'm the one that would get in trouble for telling the kid to move on without checking with his parents first or his father. But, and no one, so I said, but she could be the one that takes the blame. Thanks to the lessons of Felix and the sanguinary laws of humans, I learned now how to work mischief. I bent over and placed the portrait securely in one of the locket in one of her pockets. She moved again, and I took off. For some days, I hung out in this area. I was wondering if I'd see you, Victor. And sometimes I said, you know what, this is a waste of time. But at length, I wandered towards these mountains and have ranged through their immense recesses, consumed again with just my strong feelings, which you alone can gratify. We may not part until you have promised to comply with my requisition. I am alone, and, it's not pleasant. Humans don't want to associate with me. But maybe I could have a partner. I was thinking a compost-based partner. My companion, you could make her of compost. Another leaf-based being. So that's why I'm here, to ask you to create a leaf-based partnership for me. Do you get what I'm saying, dear Victor? But let us rest now. And you could, before you make your choice, dear Victor, we will rest for a moment still. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots, and this is a Tuck You In message. I don't know if you've been listening to episode after episode, or you just woke up, you're drifting in and out, but this is also a reminder the show is always here for you, as it has been since 2013. But I need to talk, just you and me. We got to talk for a minute if you're listening to me and hearing me right now. And you might have heard me talking about this before, but I do want to spell this out, that Sleep With Me, all of the funding to make Sleep With Me, everything that pays all of our bills and the costs of producing the show, 99% of that comes from listeners. We don't get any funding from outside sources or other entertainment companies or companies like music streaming companies or video streaming companies. We don't have any investors, and there's no other secret pipeline of support for Sleep With Me or almost every other podcast either. We get some money from sponsors that are direct response, meaning they base their sponsorship on the listeners that support them. A tiny bit from automated ads. But the majority of what keeps the show going comes from the people who get the most out of the podcast. Super listeners, ideally. And I don't know if you're a super listener. I don't know if you already made the decision you're not in a position to support the show. That's okay. Or you made the decision you're not going to support the show. That's okay, too. You could still take a part in this coming right up here. But if you didn't make one of those two decisions, we need support. Support from the people who benefit the most from the podcast. People that fall asleep fast. People that listen all night long. If we don't get more all-night listeners and people who fall asleep fast, the podcast won't be around. But we also need support from people that listen 3-4 nights a week. People who have listened for a year or longer. And I'm just wondering if you're in one of those groups. The podcast has changed your life for the better, and it continues to change your life for better. And I'm trying to lay out the stakes without using kind of fear or stress, because while that is effective, right? The last round this month, I tried to use a more positive message, and we actually lost subscribers. But it's so tiring for me. It's almost like I'd rather lose the podcast than kind of keep having to do this sales pitch and say, well, if the podcast is going to go away, if that's the only way to get people to support the show, I don't know, it's really, really not fun for me. So instead of, the stakes are there. If you haven't decided and the podcast has changed your life for the better, the stakes are, we need some of you, maybe it's you, to support the show, or it won't be around. But instead of focusing on that, I want to talk about rooting, about sending positive energy, rooting in the deep dark night. I've been talking about this in the intro for years. And that's what I believe in. I believe in rooting for other people to get a good night's sleep. And maybe you're here maybe you stuck around because someone out there, somebody who was struggling in the deep dark night just like you, was rooting for you. And you could feel that welcome when you got here. Or maybe you're one of those people who roots for other people who are struggling in the deep dark night. And here's what a couple people who did sign up in the last round of messaging said. Tiffany Y said, just because you can get something for free doesn't mean you should. I know if I have trouble for sleeping, I just have to listen. I'll be out in no time. That is definitely worth a few dollars a month. And Michelle F. said, this show is like cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia and a sleep aid all in one. I also consider it an art form, and I believe in compensating artists for their work. Timothy T. said, I'm a full-time caregiver, and the person I care for discovered your podcast, and we really like the ad-free content. It makes it easier to listen to. And then John R., who said, I'm a super listener, said, I had no idea how urgent it was. I'd been meaning to support the show, but I just never took the time. I realize now I've been unintentionally voting now. So I subscribed and with feeling. So what I'm asking is, are you the one person everybody else is rooting for? Like, just to overcome whatever it is, putting it off or saying it doesn't matter, it matters, or somebody else is going to do it, or are you the person we're rooting for to support the show? Now, it's okay if you're not. Maybe you're rooting for yourself to get a good night's sleep as soon as this episode, maybe you're an all-night listener. Maybe you woke up and you're looking forward to falling asleep soon. If you are a super listener, we did build Sleep With Me Plus with you in mind, ad-free episodes, ad-free story-only episodes, tons of different cool stuff. So I don't know if you're rooting for yourself, think about supporting the show on Sleep With Me Plus just so you get a better listening experience. But maybe you're rooting for somebody else out there. Maybe it's somebody this month, which we're rooting for, is people going back to school or who are impacted by the back-to-school season. It could be teachers, it could be parents, it could be students, it could be anybody dealing with increased traffic. Whatever it is, this beginning of this transitional season affects a lot of people, and we're rooting for all those people, whether they listen to the show or not, or whether they're a super listener or a cat. They say, well, I just needed to get through the first couple weeks of school. We're rooting for all of them to get a good night's sleep. So you could root for those people. You could root for someone whose sleep struggles are just like yours, or you could receive the rooting, because I hope you can feel it right now. I'm rooting for you, but a bunch of other people are rooting for you right now across the world. But if you're the one we're rooting for that's like, yeah, I've been putting it off. Yes, Sleep With Me continues to change my life for the better. We're rooting for you to support the show. So they'll be around, not just for you, for every other person we're rooting for. You could do that at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, because we need support, right? And you might be thinking someone else will do it. But what if, as has been said in the last couple months, time after time, what if that someone else is you, right? You're the someone else. Well, if you're that person, we're cheering you on here. Don't let that resistance, and I know what the resistance feels like. I put it off. I say it doesn't matter. I say I'll do it tomorrow. Then I criticize myself. But just do it and see how it feels. And again, you could always cancel during the free trial or cancel after a month or two. But I'm so proud of the show. And this is how I want to try to get support for the show. If it doesn't work, I don't know what I'll do. But I'm going to keep trying this more positive but honest message where everybody can participate. And everybody can participate in giving and receiving. But it is like kind of like a needle in a haystack that we're looking for now, but we got to find it. So I don't know if you're the needle in the haystack or you're somebody snoozing in the haystack, or maybe you're a horse having a hay snack. I don't know. But thanks so much for listening, and good night.